Ladies and gentlemen, let's go. Lifestyle, wellness, and a damn good time. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go. Hit it. You're listening to the Holistic Life Podcast, presented by St.
What up, guys? Welcome to the Holistic Life Show. I'm Jenny.
Yeah, I'm the kahuna.
I'm the Kine.
You're not the Kine, you're just Kine.
Oh, I'm Kine. What up? That's my name in Hawaiian. Tell them what kahuna means.
Wise man.
That's right. He's the wise man. So welcome back, as in this new episode.
Why are you being so weird today?
I don't know, because it's been a while since we recorded.
Oh
it seems like it. I mean, honestly, it really hasn't been that long.
Right.
But right now, time seems to be either moving like really fast, but also going really slow at the same time.
It's a very weird time right now.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, it's only been a week, but I feel like we did whatever 3 weeks ago.
And we have a new setup.
What's our new setup? The fact that we're looking at each other?
Yeah.
I'm like, what new setup? Guys, all that happened was we were sitting next to each other before, and now we're looking at each other.
Makes for a conversation. It's different because our past few shows, we've been talking to people. So we've had people to look at.
No, but like, I don't know. Remember how when we dated, like, we would talk on the phone a lot? You're really good at like talking without looking at nobody.
I don't see the
correlation. Anyways,
let's move on.
So the thing is we like to put the positive spin on things, right? Because it's higher vibration, it feels good, it's higher energy. But the reason we want to name this episode that is because it's almost like that's what's going on. That's how we feel. Because here's the thing. I feel like 3 months ago when coronavirus first broke out here in the US in March, as in the media started talking about it, it was like every day, multiple times a day, new information, new news. We are constantly looking to see what the latest, greatest information was.
Right.
And then fast forward to now, between everything with Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, with our episode about Enough is Enough. And if you didn't listen to that, make sure you go back and listen to that for sure. But with that, and then with coronavirus surging again, and then with unrest in other countries and trans lives matter, and there's just so many things going on. And instead of it being daily, I feel like it's kind of moved to like a weekly, every week, and sometimes a couple of times a week, there's this new breaking thing. And of course, it's election season too, so that doesn't help because there's always like this new twist on something.
I don't necessarily think or agree it's a new thing, and you probably didn't mean it like that, but I think we're just, as a society and a people right now, we're just hyper aware of everything that's going on. And so it's not that it seems like something new is popping off. It's just like, oh, fuck, then there's something else. Or, wow, there's that. With the civil rights thing, we can agree to disagree, whatever, listeners. The civil rights thing that's happening right now has sparked something. Like you said, it's an election year. That sparked something. The fact that it's now Pride Month, that sparked something else. The fact that all of this has happened once again in June in 1675, I might be getting the date wrong, but Juneteenth, where the Southern slaves were emancipated, that's something else. So like all of these things are happening kind of at the same time all at once. So it's not that this is new. It's just like it's at the forefront. It's happening, and you got people just trying to wake up and get their life together. Whatever that means, because it means something totally different than what it meant 3 months ago, 3 weeks ago, 3 days ago.
And really, you're right. And thank you for making that clarification about new, because some of the things that are being highlighted in the news and talked about very heavily are not new. They're not new. Like you said, civil rights is not new. Pride is not new. Trans lives matters. Like a lot of those things are not new, but the information I feel like that is surfacing in the way that it's surfacing, like you said, with all the different events, I think also part of it is my awareness.
Right.
Because in the past, I definitely was proudly not someone who watched the news. I didn't care about the news. I wasn't really into what was going on in the world. I figured if it was like super big, I'd hear about it and at least be in the know. But I was just living in my own little world, doing my own thing. And now with coronavirus being a global pandemic, and of course, with how I feel about the civil rights movement and what I've continued to learn through this, I'm even more hyper aware because it's almost like I feel like I'm searching for information on both of the fronts.
Right.
Right? I'm searching because coronavirus is unknown.
Right.
It feels like once you start to feel like somewhat comfortable or secure, and I'm not saying anything that's politically charged or posed there. What I mean is you start to be like, okay, I kind of get what's going on. I know what I need to do to navigate the world. It's like something else smacks you in the face.
The cool thing about you and what I love about you is you are so inquisitive. So it's not like you just started or decided to digest all this civil rights history that you haven't learned previously. But with that, you've watched other things that's happening in other places and things that, once again, hasn't been new, but you weren't aware of. Like, you know, this civil unrest here in the United States is one thing that's been going on. But, you know, there's things across the seas that have been going on. And I'm not saying that to distract or digress what's going on or downplay the movement and what's going on here in our own streets. But people are fighting all over the world for equality.
And so many different aspects of it. As like you said, as I've gone in, you know, I've been watching recently a couple of really good transgender films isn't the right word, like a documentary, I guess, type of thing. Although one was a show. So Pose, I watched on transgender rights and just world and their life. Pose basically is on Netflix and it took place in the 80s, right?
I think the 80s.
Yeah, the 80s in New York, an underground ballroom, which was specific to the LGBT community. And it was basically people, especially at that time, things were different. I'm sure some of these things still happen, so I'm not downplaying it. But especially then, I think it was even more heightened where if someone came out and said that they were gay or trans or any of the above, their parents would be like, bye, get out. And so it's sad that that still happens today. And I think watching and getting glimpses into the 80s with Pose where they would form families and people would become mothers and fathers to a group of people and they'd look out for each other. And, you know, I just heard this in Trevor Noah's book today when I was listening to it. He was talking about the thing about oppression, segregation, or anything like that, right? If there is a group of people that you don't like for a reason, if you can keep the human face and the emotion out of it, you may not even feel bad. Like going, oh, you know, they're gross or they're nasty because there's no like human emotion to it. And his example that he was giving was about how they were, as kids, they were hustling in the hood. And he said it was like a don't ask questions thing. So what they would do is they'd be like, hey, can I get your discount, your worker discount on them Nikes? And you'd be like, oh yeah. So you'd pay that person whatever their discount was, but you wouldn't ask because the discount was probably a stolen item, but you didn't ask. And so maybe they'd pay 60 Rand or whatever for the Nikes, but then they would turn around and sell them for 100 or 200, but it was still like less than whatever the market price was. And so everybody was just hustling. And regardless of what it was, there was something that was said amongst them where it was like they stole from the white people who had these items and they were like, oh, it's fine. The white people have insurance. They'll get money for it anyway, so they're not losing out on anything. So that became like the thing in the community. So they didn't even really think like, oh, this is someone's camera. This is someone's shoes they stole from that person.
Right.
It was just about hustling. And the point was that you never saw that person or the challenges they went through. You never experienced that. You just saw this thing. And especially depending on the situation, you know, a mom needs to buy food for their kids or they need to get something to get them out. I feel like I'm kind of spinning around a little bit here and kind of like going on. But I guess if you bring it back to civil rights, if you don't see it, doesn't mean it's not happening. And even if you think about a group of people who's been portrayed in the media in such a way, oh, these animals. And I mean, that could be said about the trans people too, which is crazy how similar people of color and trans people have been portrayed in the media over the years. And then it's just like this narrative about how disgusting they are. You guys got to watch Disclosure with Laverne Cox and her whole crew on there. Like, wow.
Pose is good. Pose is good. I haven't even watched the second season, but
Apparently there's a third one I saw. I'm hoping that's true.
I watched only half of the first season, but Pose is really, really good. Really eye-opening. I mean, any situation like that, and we could go to any part of the world where there's still slavery happening. There's still sex trafficking. There's still a lot of things, which kind of makes me, I don't want to generalize, but makes me stop and say, wow, the world is really fucked up.
And I think like what you just said there, when you look at the world and everything going on, because I think I saw an article that, if I say this wrong, it's just because, like I said, I'm learning more about the news and global news. But if I remember the right area, it's like Yemen is pretty much in war and has been in war for many years.
Like centuries.
It was like,
shit, right?
Well, centuries, but I think the most recent war, it said like was 5 years of war. So like all their health centers have already been like desecrated.
Wow.
Oh, and then enter COVID.
Right.
You know, when you look globally, you're like, shit is fucked up in the world. There's so many things that are just, right? And then if you're like in your bubble, in your country, in your state, in your city where you're at, all of these things are potentially disrupting your life, shaking things up in your life.
Valid.
Having you look at things differently, having you change your behaviors. I mean, especially when it comes to learning, and so much talk about white privilege and learning and making sure that you're not saying racist things, all these companies, right? Like having to evaluate, and then they make a tweet or something, and then it's like, yeah, a tweet's great, but what are you going to do about it?
I think that's important. And as I've said since the beginning of this, because this is history repeating itself. And my question is, what are the action steps after this? You have ears on it. You're being aware of what's going on. If you choose to face it, if you choose to change, or if you choose to look away and continue on, it's still there. So if we don't do anything, we're going to repeat this again in the next, 20, 25, 50 years. So what are we going to do differently? Like, what have we learned? And there's going to be some people on both sides of the spectrum, the opportunist in a situation, the people who are voicing their opinions strictly to personally gain something, or even the people who are using this as a stepping stone or a leverage to bully other people. A lot of the quote unquote schooling Caucasian people that's going on right now. Some of it I agree with. Other things I don't. Other things I don't agree with. Other things I feel some people are just being petty for whatever reason. But I think some of the education of the exposure is valid, is warranted. But you have people who are fanning the flames on both ends.
One thing you said about like, what are we going to do? What happens next? How are we going to make changes and move forward with this new information for some people and old information for others, right? I feel that was in direct response to the civil rights movement. But I also feel like that same question can be applied in general to your life, because with everything going on with coronavirus and all the other potential stresses, whether it has anything to do with political, because we are in an election year. So that's, regardless of what's going on, that's amplified.
Election year aside, though, because I feel, yes, things are amplified because it is an election year, but every other year is pieces being moved around, gearing up for the next election year. It's like, yeah, this year is more serious because it's a major election, but everything else is like movement, just placing the pieces.
Trying to lead towards here is like, okay, we all can acknowledge that shit is crazy right now. Some things are really good and some things feel like, what the hell is going on? It's a mixture of all these emotions that can feel very overwhelming, can cause us to be more stressed. There's just so many things that are going on with heightened emotions. And so then I was thinking is like, okay, I felt like that question could apply to say, okay, how can we really stay positive and continue to move forward? Because how easy is it to just get sucked in and go down that path, right? And I feel like for me, and this may have been for you too, Jay, is earlier on with the coronavirus, I got sucked in and it completely derailed my days. And then as that became quote unquote new normal, which honestly, if you want to hear me talk about like what is normal anyways, you can listen on the Life Adventurous podcast. I did an episode about what is normal, but that word is just weird right now, like normal, whatever. But I feel like as time has gone on, I remember we had this conversation. It's like, okay, we saw how we reacted to the coronavirus news and information. And then even gaining the weight, eating all kinds of sweets and everything. And then how we were like, hold up. We got to get ourselves in a better mental space so that we can move forward because life is going to go on. We can't just stay in this tornado drain and go down the drain with it. Everything we've worked for. And so that's kind of where I was like, all right, all this stuff is going on. Your question as it relates to civil rights, I feel like is just as important to ask, like, okay, what's going to be different? When new information comes, how are you going to react to it differently?
And the question really wasn't in place of just civil rights. It was kind of a question to what you're alluding to now, like going forward, how you treat people, your personal interactions, what's going to be different? Because the only way we're going to change is to do things differently.
And especially when it comes to your own life, every single one of us has the power to choose how we react to things that are presented in our life. And so when you notice the stress levels go up higher, when you notice the feelings of overwhelm, when you notice the anger, when you notice the heightened emotions, how are you going to choose to react to them? Are you going to go to food, alcohol, yelling at people on the internet, yelling at family members, yelling at friends? Or is it maybe other outlets that are going to be more positive for you? You dance, you work out, you create something, you fill in the blank. So what have you been doing, Jay? Here we are, month 4? Now where you're at, everything going on, what are you doing? How does this feel for you?
People may agree to disagree, whatever. I don't think this thing is going anywhere as the virus. Let's scratch that. We won't even talk about that. But realizing people are going to have their opinions, no matter what type of information is presented out there, especially with the civil unrest going on out there. And I have my opinion about it, and not being triggered when someone who doesn't agree with me or has a different opinion, and trying not to get upset or angry about that. So one of the things for me, since Facebook is the hotbed for that, people sitting behind a keyboard and voicing their opinions, I deleted Facebook from my phone.
Right, which we're still on there for business purposes, and we still interact and reply to people. But
we got to be. But
from the phone, you're not.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Because once you did it, I think I did it the next day. And then I told you, like, I picked up my phone multiple times.
Just to try to see what was going on. Looking to open
Facebook and scroll, and it's not there. And I'm like, oh, there's nothing really to do on my phone now.
The power of FB.
I know, right? Like, I'll get on Instagram and I'll scroll a little bit, but I don't usually stay there too long.
But that's one of the main things, because it's super important for me to protect my energy, especially with what we're trying to do, what we're trying to go, and how we're trying to help other people. So that's been a major thing for me, is like disconnecting in a way from Facebook.
And I think it's still a work in progress for me. But the things that I've done is realizing that I was eating a lot of the stress. We went back to the basics. I mean, everything we had created in the Thrive Guide and what we just launched after working on that project for about 5 months, everything we put in there, like going back to the basics and taking my own medicine. I think that was huge because it helped knock me back into alignment. I like that better. Knock me back into alignment. Also, like you said, protecting the energy. I am meditating, let's say 80 to 90% of the time in the mornings when I get up, because I find that that's like a peaceful place to be. And it's a way for me just to completely step away from everything going on and just calm my mind, which overall I feel like helps my emotions so that they don't like spin out crazily. And the boundaries, right? Like we also have chosen to watch lighter things or fun things or funny things or do different things, because obviously life is different right now. Depending on where you live and what your area is like, there could still be things closed, and maybe some of the things you like to do aren't open right now or whatever. There's different restrictions. So it's constantly being creative and trying to figure out, okay, how can we still have an amazing life? Because that's who we are. We're about having fun. We're about keeping our vibrations high, dreaming big. Like we just were like, oh my God, we got to dream big again. When you get stuck in that tornado and you're caught up in the day to day.
You got to be careful with that too. Well, not careful with dreaming big. Dream as big as you want. Fuck that. Dream as big as you want.
Thank you for clarifying because I was about to be like, whoa.
Yeah. Dream as big as you want. But be careful with, yes, let me clarify. Let me expound on that. What I meant was being careful with who you're around when you're dreaming big, when you want to do that, because people see the world in their own
from their own lenses.
Yeah, from their own lenses, from their own point of view. And some of the things you're talking about doing or the dreams you have, they have never even thought those things were possible. So it's not a knock on you, but it's just internal for them to be like, that's crazy. That'll never happen.
Yeah, it's almost like if you were like, oh, I want to make $100,000 this month. Look, it's possible. There's people out there doing it, but there's a lot of people who just laugh you right back into your seat.
So when you're dreaming big, when you're dreaming huge, when you're building an empire, whatever that looks like for you, be sure to surround yourself with the people who either have done it and can guide you, read things from people who will show you how to get there, and socialize with people who are going to cheer you on. Like anybody, I don't care, family, friends, whoever, if you tell them something big and they just look at you and laugh or they doubt you, it's not that they're doubting you. They doubt it could happen for them. Don't talk about that stuff around them.
Right. Because then that can just send you back into the whole thing of what we talked about and being like, that shit is overwhelming. Ooh, my tone was different.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
You had a different tone.
Yeah. Because I feel better, right? Like think about the course of this conversation and even maybe the course of conversations in your head with other people or even just listening to this podcast. Like when we started, it was like, for me, it felt a lot heavier because we were talking about some really heavy stuff and really getting into those emotions. And now that we've lifted out of that and we're talking about what we can do to shift and pivot and stay more positive and dream big, like I feel lighter. And check in with yourself. Like, how do you feel right now? Like, how does your body feel? How does your heart feel? How does your mind feel? How do you feel? And this is all part of that shift, right? Jay feels really good. He's over here head bopping. He's over here dancing and head bopping. I wish you could see him. Maybe soon. We're talking about maybe doing some behind the scenes lives, possibly. Oh, we got to test out some stuff.
Yep.
Oh, hey.
What?
So kind of random.
Uh-huh.
But we heard.
What?
This sounds like we're making a music. So we heard that a lot of you are listening from the UK and Africa. Thank you for listening. Keep sharing. Keep telling your friends about us. I love how you found us and I love that you're sticking around. So it's like one of my dreams to have like global connection with people all over the world, people from different places and backgrounds. I could totally cheese out on that.
Yeah, she's giddy as shit right now.
I know. I'm like, oh my God. Like I heard we're like top 75 in Africa. Like sweet, man. Africa like is a place I've wanted to go to for a very, very long time.
And everybody else listening, keep on listening. Not only Africa, UK, US. Yes, crank that shit up.
Yes. All right, guys. Till next time. Holla.
Hey. You can subscribe to the Holistic Life Podcast from your favorite streaming platform. And don't forget to check out 2jholla.com to stay in the know as an official 2JH insider. Mahalo for tuning in. And until next time, that's our show.